Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, we have been working on adding fractions using the fraction bars, using fraction models that you've drawn. We're going to start using the standard algorithm. Now, I've already recorded a video last night on tutorials and a video in my first class. They're both attached to today's lesson if you want more help on that. But I'm going to go over two problems. And again, we're doing it just using the standard algorithm. We're going to start with 1/4 plus 2/3. Bree, can I add those fractions like they're written?
No.
Why not, Bree? The denominators are not the same. I can't add fractions if the denominators are not the same. That's just silly. So I need to find what is called the least common denominator. Now, if you have a multiplication chart, you can look at the row that starts with 3 and the row that starts with 4 and find the first number that shows up in both. So it would look something like this. Here's our row with 3 and our row with 4. 4, 8, 12, and look here, our least common denominator is 12. Now what's going to happen is there are people who are going to say, how do you find the least common denominator? And I'm going to say, well, if you don't remember, go back and watch one of the videos that's on the Tube of You that is also posted on January 6th Classroom of Google. Now what we do once we get the common denominator is we want to make equivalent fractions with that denominator. We are not going to change the value. So whatever we put here is going to have to be equal to 1/4. Whatever we put here is going to have to be equal to 2/3. It's like saying there are 60 minutes in an hour. Those are the same thing, 60 minutes, 1 hour. Just said differently, written differently. There are 4 quarters in a dollar. Same thing. We are changing 1/4 to something that equals the same thing. Now we know one part of our fraction. We know our denominator. And we determine that by our least common denominator. So I need to ask Jacob, what do you multiply by 4 to get 12? 3. If I'm going to multiply my denominator by 3, I must also multiply my numerator by 3. Because if I'm multiplying them by the same thing, the value is going to stay the same. It's not going to change. And so Jacob, 1 times 3 is 3. So 1/4 and 3/12 are exactly the same value. You take a test and you get 1 out of 4 questions correct, and somebody else takes a test and gets 3 out of 12 questions correct, they get the same grade. Now we need to do the same thing with 2/3. We need to change 2/3 to a fraction that has a denominator of 12 without changing the value. So let's go, Maddie R. What am I going to multiply 3 by so that I have a denominator of 12? 4. If I multiply my denominator by 4, I must also multiply my numerator by 4. So Eva, what's my new numerator on this second fraction? No, 2 times 4 is 8. That's my new numerator. I go back, I make sure I'm doing the right sign because I'll give you a question or assignments that are mixed up. You need to pay attention to what sign you use. So now we have 3/12 plus 8/12. Giovanni, can I add those the way they are currently written? Yes, because they have the same denominator. That's the exact same problem. I just changed the way the add-ins were written. The exact same problem. So Giovanni, 3/12 plus 8/12 is 11/12. Now, anytime your numerator is 1 less than your denominator, you can't simplify. So 11/12 is our final answer for this. We've been working on simplifying. We'll do a couple of reminders as the year moves on also on simplifying. So that'll be the last step you would have to do. If it's an improper fraction, you'd have to change it to a mixed number. So on and so forth. Let's do 3/5 plus 3/10. But let me ask a different question before we get started. 3/5. Amory, is it less than or greater than a half? If you had 5 pieces of candy and you ate 3 of them, did you eat less than or more than a half? More than a half. 3/5 is more than a half. What about 3/10, Amory? 3/10, is that less than or more than a half? Less. Good. Good. Now we got to find our least common denominator. Nothing that we do in fractions is difficult. It takes a lot of steps that you can't do in your head unless you're a knucklehead and don't want to get them all correct. Don't be a knucklehead. We need to find our least common denominators for 5 and 10. And as you do more and more of these, you're going to realize what the least common denominator is without even having to list this out. Because the smallest number they have in common is 10. 5, 10, 15, 20, 10, 20, 30, 40. I mean, they have other multiples in common. They have 20 in common. They have 30 in common. They have 40 in common. But the bigger your denominator is, I mean, I could multiply 10 times 5 and have 50 in common. But the bigger your denominator is, the more work you're going to have to do on the simplifying process. I'm just saying. All right, so now we've determined with our least common denominator that our common denominator is going to be 10. Once we know this, we're just making equivalent fractions. So I have 5 times what equals 10? Dallin? 2. If I multiply my denominator by 2, I must also multiply my numerator by 2. And so, Dallin, what is my new numerator? 6. Now, 3/10 is already over 10. So I really don't even have to change it. Right? 3/10 is already over 10, so I'm just going to leave it as 3/10. We'll leave it as 3/10. Allie, what is the sum of those two fractions? 9/10. Once again, since the numerator is 1 less than the denominator, it can't be simplified. I mean, you know how to simplify fractions. If you've forgotten, there's always videos on my Tube of You channel that you can refer back to. Boom, shakalaka. Please subscribe. Love you all. Have a great day. See ya.